A viewer has pointed out I have not yet done a video on what might be called human waste management on the Appalachian Trail. We can fix that. I have discussed it briefly in a couple of other videos, but here we can talk all about the bathroom thing on the AT, and we can cover a number of details I have not yet mentioned. Like so many other things on the AT, doing our business is pretty straightforward when we are healthy, happy, and the sun is shining. This is particularly true if we're at a shelter with a privy or if we're basking in the luxury of a hostel. But if it's in the middle of the night and there's no privy and it's raining like hell, things might get a little complicated. And if we have diarrhea, it might be more complicated. When we gotta go, we gotta go, so let's make sure we are ready for that kind of worst-case scenario. Before we get into that, however, we should review some basics as spelled out by the AT Conservancy. The link's in the description. The ATC warns us not to expect flush toilets on the trail and adds that many times we'll have to do it in the woods. It points out that correctly handling feces, both human and our dogs, is a fundamental leave-no-trace practice. It's important for maintaining healthy backcountry water supplies. If we are in the woods, the ATC says, we need to dig a cat hole 6 to 8 inches deep. I can only say what I've said before. I cannot dig a hole 6 to 8 inches deep without a trowel. At least not without taking 10 or more minutes to get the job done. Many people find themselves in a hurry when they dig that cat hole. I don't want to try to dig even a 6-inch hole in a hurry without a trowel. At established campsites, the ground can be as hard as a rock, but in my experience, the soil in the woods can be dug up quite handily with this thing. We don't have to swing it as hard as a sledgehammer. A series of short jabs will get the hole started. This one has been digging holes for more than 15 years and it still works. The ATC is quite direct and says, quote, "No one should venture on the AT without a trowel or a wide tent stake." I assume they're talking about the kind of plastic tent stakes I have seen that are nearly an inch wide, but even that will be slow digging compared to a trowel. The ATC also says this digging, pooping, and burying should take place at least 200 feet or 80 paces away from water, trails, or shelters. That's 2/3 the length of a football field, so it's quite a distance when we are surrounded by trees. And there is more. The ATC says to use a stick to mix dirt with the feces, which speeds decomposition and discourages animals from digging it up. Used toilet paper should be either buried or carried out in a sealed plastic bag. Hygiene products, such as sanitary napkins, should always be carried out. Everybody can understand the value of hand sanitizer, but the ATC says sanitizer alone is not effective against norovirus. To fight that, we need soap and water. If we have to make an emergency pit stop along a section of the trail that looks like this, getting 200 feet into the woods will be a problem, to say the least. We'll have to do the best we can, and that strengthens the case for making the hole good and deep. I once went around a bend in the trail and met a woman sitting next to her pack, fully clothed, who looked at me and announced, "I have to go to the bathroom and I need some privacy." I said, "Okay," and started running. Never let it be said I don't know how to follow orders in an emergency. I don't know what kind of a bathroom stop that was, but as far as I know, it's accepted that we can urinate almost anywhere in the woods, except maybe directly on the trail, and definitely not anywhere near a water source. They are not common, but we might find a privy with a sign on the door telling us please don't urinate in the privy because that limits composting ability. And because defecating and urinating often happen at about the same time, I can only assume this is another question of doing the best we can under the circumstances. For a long time, mountaineers would urinate into a designated bottle so they don't have to leave the tent. Backpackers can do the same in their tent if it's the middle of the night or if it's raining, for example. The mountaineering recommendation is to use a bottle that will hold a liter or a quart to make sure the opening is wide enough to guarantee precise aim and to mark the bottle so we cannot confuse it with a water bottle. A sort of a funnel called Go Girl has been designed to help women and girls obtain, shall we say, the kind of precise aim I was just talking about in a convenient manner. Not all of the reviewers on Amazon.com tell us it works well, so it would be a good plan for any interested ladies to buy one and try it at home first. If we do travel that 200 feet off the trail to go to the bathroom, we'd better remember the direction back to the trail. The most publicized recent case of an AT hiker going missing and being found dead began when she went into the woods to go to the bathroom and couldn't find her way back to the trail. If we absolutely have to leave the trail and go into the woods, please, let's check a compass before we do. If we go east off the trail, we have to go west to get back onto the trail. We can buy perfectly reliable compasses that will fit, for example, on a watch band or clipped to a pack strap, or we could buy a fancy compass. The main thing is to make sure it works right when we buy it and to use it on the AT. It is dangerous to go 200 feet into the woods unless we are 100% sure how to get back on the trail. We should remember that poison ivy and stinging nettles grow along the AT, and ticks can be found in many areas. I'm sure none of us want to have an intimate encounter with any of those things, so the first step would be to avoid wading through heavy brush. It also will help if we find a spot, however small, without many plants growing. I always look for a spot like that, and I always manage to find one. And that would be the place to dig that cat hole. If the terrain is hilly, I always take a trekking pole with me to help me keep my balance and not go tumbling downhill. When we drop our drawers, we need to pay attention to where they are to make sure we hit the hole and not our pants. The Pacific Crest Trail is getting more crowded than it used to, and the PCT Association's instructions for handling human waste are virtually the same as the AT Conservancy's, and the link's in the description. And this brings us back to the issue of doing it in the woods in the middle of the night. If it's raining badly, toilet paper that gets rained on can pretty much disintegrate in our hands. If a normal piece of paper towel is torn into 3 or 4 pieces, for example, each piece is big enough for the job and will still work if rained on. So, in fact, could a paper napkin. If we want to stay even halfway dry, a rain jacket is a good bet. As I have said, I always carry an umbrella on the AT, and it's the smallest, cheapest one I could find. If the wind isn't too bad, I can rest the handle on my shoulder and let the canopy, for lack of a better word, rest on my head. If we use a poncho, we need to make sure it won't get in the way and get soiled. As I've said before, I would not leave my tent in the dark without a light, and this job would be no exception. If we're doing this in the rain, we want the process to be as quick as practical, and for me that means this trowel. Diarrhea is no fun anywhere, particularly on a long trail. I once read about a study that said failure to keep our hands clean is more likely to give us diarrhea in the woods than untreated water. Hand sanitizer certainly helps, but I'm not sure how effective it is if we have even a trace of fecal matter on our hands. If we have them, wet wipes can clean our hands. I always carry a few small Nalgene bottles, and one of them contains only water. I can improvise a wet wipe by dampening a piece of paper towel with water from this little Nalgene, and follow that up with some hand sanitizer. My local REI store sells bottles like this. Before I buy one, I tighten the lid in the store to see if it leaks air when squeezed. If it does not leak air, it won't leak in my pack or pocket. Another thing I always carry is Imodium, an over-the-counter anti-diarrhea medicine. I have never taken any on the AT, but at the first sign of trouble, I would. For the record, I also carry toilet paper and use it where conditions allow, like a privy. As I have said, we are not supposed to dump food scraps or trash into a privy. Many privies I have used on the AT smell horrible in the summer, so I usually prop the door open and wait a minute before going in to let the thing air out. As I have said, if we are sleeping in a crowded shelter and we have to make a dash to the privy in the middle of the night, we need to keep our light handy. We also need to be able to turn that light on quickly without a lot of fumbling around, and we are less likely to wake anybody else up if the light has a red lens. If we find ourselves at that crowded shelter, or for example a crowded hostel, we need to keep in mind a lot of people are going to be lining up to use the toilet or the privy or whatever early in the morning. So let's not pretend we own the thing, because there will be other people waiting to get in. And with that, we're once again done. A million thanks go out to my subscribers. If you have not yet subscribed, it would be very much appreciated. And as always, thanks for watching.